Have you ever walked into a grocery store looking for something you buy every week, only to discover that the shelf is suddenly empty? Maybe the product is temporarily unavailable. Maybe the price has jumped. Or maybe the store has replaced it with a completely different brand. For shoppers, these changes can be frustrating. But for families who depend on certain grocery staples, they can also become a serious problem when shortages last longer than expected. The reality is that grocery availability can change quickly. Weather can affect crops. Transportation problems can delay shipments. Manufacturing disruptions can reduce production. And sudden increases in demand can empty store shelves faster than suppliers can restock them. That's why some experts recommend paying attention to products that depend on vulnerable supply chains or limited sources of production. Today, we're looking at 10 grocery items that could become harder to find if certain supply pressures continue. This doesn't mean these foods will completely disappear. It also doesn't mean you should panic buy or empty store shelves. Instead, the goal is to understand which products may be more vulnerable and think about practical alternatives before you actually need them. For some families, that could mean buying a reasonable backup supply. For others, it might simply mean learning which substitute products are available. The smartest approach is preparation, not panic. If you regularly use a product, knowing how to replace it can save you money, time, and frustration when your preferred option isn't available. And remember, grocery shortages don't always affect every store in the same way. One supermarket may have empty shelves while another nearby has plenty of stock. Availability can also vary by region. So pay attention to what you're actually seeing in your local stores. Before we begin, subscribe to Prepper Pulse and turn on notifications. We upload new videos daily with practical grocery tips, food storage ideas, and preparedness strategies to help you stay informed and ready. Now let's count down 10 grocery items that experts and supply chain watchers are keeping an eye on. Starting with number 10. Starting our countdown at number 10 is a product that has become increasingly important in kitchens around the world. Olive oil. It's used for cooking, salad dressings, marinades, baking, and countless everyday recipes. But olive oil has a supply chain that can be vulnerable to weather conditions. Olive trees depend heavily on suitable growing conditions, and drought, extreme heat, or other environmental problems can affect harvests. When production falls, the impact can reach grocery shelves through higher prices and reduced availability. Another factor is that much of the world's olive oil comes from specific growing regions. That means problems in a relatively small number of major producing areas can influence the broader market. For shoppers, this can create an unusual situation. The product may still be available, but your favorite brand or size may become difficult to find. Smart families don't need to panic buy. Instead, they can watch prices and compare different brands and varieties. Depending on the recipe, other cooking oils may also provide suitable alternatives. If olive oil is a regular part of your household's cooking routine, keeping a reasonable backup bottle can help you avoid paying a premium during temporary supply disruptions. Store it according to the product instructions and protect it from excessive heat and light to help maintain quality. Olive oil earns the number 10 spot because its production is concentrated in specific regions and can be affected by weather and agricultural conditions. And the next grocery item is something even more essential. A basic ingredient that appears in kitchens everywhere and plays a role in thousands of different recipes. At number 9 is a basic ingredient that most families don't think about until they suddenly need it. Sugar. It's used in baking, desserts, drinks, sauces, preserves, and countless everyday recipes. Sugar is also an important ingredient for food manufacturers, restaurants, and bakeries, which means demand extends far beyond household kitchens. Its availability can be influenced by crop conditions, weather, transportation, and global production. When supply becomes tighter or production costs increase, shoppers may notice higher prices or fewer choices on store shelves. The issue isn't necessarily that sugar will completely disappear. Instead, certain brands, package sizes, or specialty varieties may become harder to find. Smart shoppers can prepare by keeping a reasonable amount of the sugar they regularly use. If you bake frequently, Having a backup package in your pantry can save you from making an unexpected trip when supplies are limited. Store sugar in a cool, dry place and protect it from moisture. Different types of sugar can also serve different purposes, so consider keeping the varieties your household actually uses rather than buying products that will sit untouched. You can also compare store brands with name brands. For many everyday recipes, a less expensive option may work just as well. Sugar earns the number 9 spot because it's a widely used ingredient with a supply chain influenced by agriculture, weather, and global demand. And the next grocery item is something many families rely on every morning. A popular breakfast staple that can become surprisingly difficult to replace when supplies tighten. At number 8 is one of the most popular grocery products in the world: coffee. For millions of people, coffee is part of their daily routine. It's the first drink of the morning, a break during the workday. And for many households, it's something they buy every single week. But coffee has a complex global supply chain. Most coffee beans are grown in specific regions around the world, meaning weather problems in major producing areas can have an impact far beyond the farms themselves. Drought, excessive rainfall, plant diseases, and changing growing conditions can all affect harvests. Then there's the journey from farms to consumers. Coffee beans must be harvested, processed, shipped, roasted, packaged, and distributed before they reach your local supermarket. Disruptions at any stage can create delays or higher costs. For shoppers, that could mean higher prices or difficulty finding a particular brand. It doesn't necessarily mean coffee will disappear from grocery shelves. But your usual product may not always be available at the price you're used to paying. Smart shoppers can prepare by comparing different brands and considering alternatives such as instant coffee or different roast varieties. If your household drinks coffee every day, keeping a reasonable backup supply can also prevent you from having to buy whatever happens to be available during a temporary shortage. Store coffee according to the manufacturer's recommendations to maintain freshness and quality. Coffee earns the number 8 spot because its supply depends heavily on international agriculture and transportation. And the next grocery item is something that appears in almost every kitchen. A staple that can be used in breakfast, baking, and countless homemade meals. At number 7 is one of the most important basic ingredients in the grocery store: flour. It's used to make bread, pancakes, biscuits, pizza dough, cakes, cookies, and countless other foods. Because flour is such a fundamental ingredient, even a small disruption in wheat production can eventually affect many different products at the grocery store. Wheat crops depend heavily on weather. Drought, extreme heat, heavy rainfall, and other growing conditions can all influence harvest sizes. When wheat supplies become tighter, the impact can reach flour mills, bakeries, food manufacturers, and eventually consumers. That means shoppers may notice higher prices or fewer choices before they ever hear about an actual shortage. The good news is that flour is relatively easy to store. If your household regularly bakes or cooks with flour, keeping a reasonable backup supply can provide some flexibility. Store it in a cool, dry place and protect it from moisture and pantry pests. You can also consider different types of flour depending on your cooking needs. All-purpose flour may be the most versatile option for many households, while other varieties are useful for specific recipes. Smart shoppers should focus on what they actually use. There's no reason to purchase a large quantity of specialty flour that will sit untouched in the pantry. Instead, watch for sales and buy a reasonable amount when the price is favorable. Flour earns the number 7 spot because it depends on agricultural production and is used to make a huge range of everyday foods. And the next grocery item is something that can become difficult to replace when supplies tighten. A popular ingredient that millions of families depend on for everyday cooking. At number 6 is a dairy staple that millions of families use every week: butter. It's used for cooking, baking, toast, sauces, and countless homemade recipes. But butter depends on the larger dairy supply chain, which means changes in milk production can eventually affect what shoppers find in grocery stores. Dairy farms depend on animal feed, labor, energy, transportation, and refrigeration. If any of those costs increase, the pressure can eventually reach the price and availability of butter. Seasonal changes can also influence dairy production. And because butter needs to remain properly refrigerated, transportation and storage are important parts of getting it from producers to grocery shelves. When supply becomes tighter, shoppers may notice higher prices or fewer options. Your favorite brand might be unavailable while another brand remains in stock. Smart families can prepare by keeping a reasonable backup supply if they regularly use butter. Butter can also be frozen for longer storage when properly packaged, which gives households more flexibility when prices are favorable. However, there is no need to buy more than you can realistically use. The goal is to reduce the impact of future price increases without creating unnecessary food waste. It's also useful to have alternative cooking fats available. Depending on the recipe, vegetable oil, canola oil, or other suitable fats may work as substitutes. Butter earns the number 6 spot because it's a high-demand everyday product connected to a complex dairy supply chain. And now we're entering the top 5. The next grocery item is something that can become especially difficult to find when weather problems or supply disruptions affect the food system. We're now in the top 5. At number 5 is a grocery category that can become difficult to keep consistently stocked when weather and transportation problems occur. Fresh produce. Lettuce, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and other fresh vegetables can be highly dependent on growing conditions and reliable transportation. Extreme heat can damage crops. Heavy rainfall can disrupt harvests. And unexpected weather events can affect farms and transportation routes. Because fresh produce is highly perishable, it also depends on a fast and reliable supply chain. Farmers harvest the crops. They are transported to distribution centers, then shipped to grocery stores, and finally placed on shelves for shoppers. Any delay along the way can reduce availability. That's why you may sometimes walk into a store and find that a particular vegetable is suddenly missing or significantly more expensive. The good news is that fresh produce shortages are often temporary and vary by region. One store may have limited supplies while another has plenty. Smart shoppers can protect their grocery budget by staying flexible. If tomatoes are expensive, consider another vegetable. If fresh lettuce is unavailable, look for cabbage or other alternatives that may have a longer shelf life. Frozen and canned vegetables can also provide useful backup options. If your household regularly consumes fresh produce, buying only what you can use before it spoils is important. Food waste can quickly eliminate the savings you thought you were getting. Fresh produce earns the number 5 spot because it is highly perishable and depends on weather, harvesting, refrigeration, and transportation. And now we're down to the final 4. The next grocery item is something many families rely on for quick meals and snacks. And when supplies become tight, shoppers can notice the difference almost immediately. At number 4 is a grocery item that many families keep in their pantry because it's convenient, shelf-stable, and easy to prepare. Canned fish, tuna, salmon, sardines, and other canned seafood products can provide a practical source of protein without requiring refrigeration before opening. But availability can be affected by several factors. Fishing conditions, weather, fuel costs, transportation, and changes in global seafood supplies can all influence what eventually reaches grocery shelves. Some canned fish products also depend heavily on international supply chains. That means disruptions in shipping or processing can affect certain brands or varieties even when other products remain available. This is why shoppers may sometimes notice their preferred canned fish disappearing from shelves or becoming significantly more expensive. Smart families can prepare by avoiding dependence on only one specific brand. If you regularly eat canned fish, compare different varieties and consider buying a reasonable amount when prices are favorable. Canned seafood can also be extremely versatile. You can eat it with crackers, add it to sandwiches, mix it into salads, or combine it with other pantry staples for a more substantial meal. Because unopened cans can be stored for an extended period when kept in a cool, dry location, they can also be gradually rotated into your regular meals. Always inspect cans before opening and avoid using severely swollen, leaking, or badly damaged containers. Canned fish earns the number 4 spot because it's a convenient protein source that depends on fishing, processing, transportation, and international supply chains. And now we're down to the final three. The next grocery item is one of the most important staples in kitchens around the world. We're down to the final three. At number 3 is one of the most important staple foods in the world. Rice. For millions of families, rice is an everyday food. It's affordable, filling, versatile, and easy to combine with countless other ingredients. But rice availability can be influenced by several factors at the same time. Weather conditions can affect harvests. Drought can reduce crop yields. Flooding can damage farmland. And transportation problems can delay shipments. Because rice is traded internationally, disruptions in one major producing region can sometimes affect supplies in other markets. When shoppers become concerned about future availability, demand can also increase suddenly. That's when a normal supply problem can become much more noticeable. Families start buying extra bags. Stores sell through inventory faster. And certain package sizes may become difficult to find. This doesn't necessarily mean rice will disappear. But shoppers may notice higher prices or fewer choices. Smart families can avoid panic buying by maintaining a reasonable supply based on their normal consumption. If your household eats rice regularly, buying an extra bag when the price is favorable may provide some flexibility. The key is proper storage. Keep rice in a cool, dry location and protect it from moisture and pantry pests. Rotate your supply by using older packages first and replacing them during normal grocery trips. Different types of rice also have different storage characteristics, so choose varieties that fit your family's needs and consumption habits. Rice earns the number 3 spot because it is a globally important staple that depends on agriculture, weather, transportation, and international trade. And now we're down to the final 2. The next grocery item is something that can become difficult to replace when supplies tighten. And millions of families depend on it every single day. We're down to the final 2. At number 2 is one of the most important everyday grocery staples. Eggs. Millions of families depend on eggs for breakfast, baking, sandwiches, and quick meals. They're affordable compared with many other protein sources and can be prepared in countless ways. But egg availability can change quickly when the poultry industry faces disruptions. Disease outbreaks can affect flocks. Feed costs can increase production expenses. Extreme weather can create additional challenges. And transportation problems can make it harder for products to move from farms to grocery stores. When supply becomes tighter, shoppers may notice higher prices, limited quantities, or temporary gaps on store shelves. Eggs are also highly perishable, which means grocery stores need a reliable supply chain to keep fresh products available. That makes eggs particularly sensitive to disruptions. Smart families don't need to panic by dozens of cartons. Instead, they can pay attention to prices and keep a reasonable supply based on how quickly their household uses them. It's also useful to know a few alternatives. Powdered egg products can work in certain cooking and baking situations. Some recipes can use substitutes such as flax or chia mixtures. And having other protein sources available can reduce your dependence on fresh eggs. If you regularly buy eggs, consider purchasing them when prices are favorable and rotating them through your normal meals. The goal is to avoid being caught completely unprepared if prices suddenly rise or your preferred product becomes temporarily unavailable. Eggs earn the number 2 spot because they're a high-demand staple that depends on poultry production, feed, transportation, and a reliable cold supply chain. But now we've reached number 1. The final grocery item is something that almost every household depends on. And when it becomes harder to find, the impact can be felt far beyond the breakfast table. We've reached number 1. The grocery item that could become harder to find when supply pressures increase is one of the most popular protein sources in the average household. Chicken. From whole chickens to breasts, thighs, wings, and prepared products, chicken is used in countless meals. It's affordable compared with many other meats. It's versatile. And it's a regular part of weekly grocery shopping for millions of families. But chicken production depends on a complex system. Poultry farms require feed, water, energy, labor, transportation, processing facilities, refrigeration, and reliable distribution. If any part of that system experiences disruption, availability can be affected. Disease outbreaks can also create serious challenges for poultry producers. When production falls, grocery stores may experience tighter supplies and higher prices. And because chicken is highly perishable, it depends heavily on a functioning refrigerated supply chain. This means a disruption in transportation or processing can sometimes become noticeable very quickly. Smart families don't need to panic by large quantities. Instead, they can diversify their protein options. Keep some canned fish, beans, shelf-stable foods, or other suitable alternatives available. If chicken prices rise or your preferred cut becomes difficult to find, having other options means you won't be forced to pay whatever price happens to be available. For households with enough freezer space, buying chicken during a good sale and freezing it properly can also help reduce the impact of future price increases. But always follow safe food handling and storage practices. Chicken earns the #1 spot because it's a high-demand everyday staple that depends on agriculture, feed, processing, refrigeration, and transportation. The important thing to remember is that a product becoming harder to find doesn't necessarily mean it will disappear completely. Sometimes the issue is temporary. Sometimes only certain brands or package sizes are affected. And sometimes another store in your area may have plenty of supply. That's why smart preparation is about flexibility. Don't depend on just one brand. Don't rely on only one type of protein. And don't wait until a shortage becomes obvious before thinking about alternatives. Pay attention to prices. Watch your local grocery shelves. Buy reasonable quantities when prices are favorable. And rotate what you purchase so nothing goes to waste. The goal isn't panic buying. It's making small decisions today that can make grocery shopping easier tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Prepper Pulse and turn on notifications. We upload new videos daily with practical grocery tips, food storage ideas, and preparedness strategies to help you stay informed and ready. Stay prepared, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.